So I'm going to start this review by saying something controversial, which is that the director of the god-awful Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie is responsible for the greatest James Bond of all time. Um, Controversial opinion, sure, I know, but undoubtedly true. You can make the argument that Sean Connery is the greatest Bond of all time. Some people might try and make the Pierce Brosnan argument. If you like cheesy movies, maybe Roger Moore is kind of your bag. But yeah, Martin Campbell, who did direct the awful Green Lantern film, actually directed two James Bond movies. He directed Goldeneye, which had a video game adaptation, which occupied basically like all of my teenage years. Shout out to Slappers Only. And he also directed Casino Royale, which is really interesting. He did, Pierce Brosnan's first Goldeneye role, or first role in Goldeneye, and then he did Daniel Craig's first role in Casino Royale, which to me still remains the best James Bond movie I've ever seen. Another controversial opinion. So let's talk about No Time to Die. All right, so thanks for checking out the review. Before we get started, click on that red subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you know whenever I post a new video. Finally, we get the last film of the 5 Daniel Craig James Bond movies. So far, we've had Casino Royale. We've had Quantum of Solace, which is absolute garbage. We've had Skyfall, great movie. We've had Spectre, another great movie that I think gets a lot of crap when I actually think it's pretty damn good. And then we have this one, No Time to Die. And this film is directed by Cary Joji Fukunaga, who I came onto my radar when he directed the first season of True Detective, which at some point I'm going to review that, but I think this first season of True Detective is probably the finest single season of any TV show of all time. And to me, it's not really even all that close. That show is so freaking good, and the drop off in quality between seasons 2 and 3, I think the fact that the didn't have this director helming the pictures hurt it somewhat. It also had some pretty bad script problems. So he's here, he's back helming a major feature film, and this movie kind of rules. It understands the emotional depth of Daniel Craig's particular portrayal of James Bond, and it really does. It doesn't shy away from that. I think it would have been easy to make, a very James Bond feeling film. And in a lot of ways, this is. It's a throwback to earlier films. It's got way more of the gadgets going on. And it's got really very much a stereotypical James Bond villain, which actually does kind of work against the favor of the film. So I'll talk a little bit about all that stuff in more detail. But yeah, for a closing chapter, this really is a very special movie. It's also about 30 minutes too long. There's a lot here that I feel like they could have trimmed or at least slimmed down. But I think upon repeated viewings, I'll continue to really like this movie. It has some of the best action the series has ever done, not just the Craig films. While I'll still say that Casino Royale is the best James Bond movie, and there's arguments that you could go with Goldfinger. You could go with, there's a million different, like people have their different tastes. I'm mostly a Casino Royale guy. I'll never forget the feeling of seeing that movie in the theater. And Craig here really does nail the emotional vulnerability that's required, that's asked of him via the script for this film. So Craig is fantastic in it. As far as other, bit players in the movie, Rami Malek's villain, you got to talk about him. I think that he's a little bit of a misstep and probably the weakest part of the film as far as like big important pieces go. It's not really a knock on Malek. He actually does pretty good work with the material that he's given. He just kind of doesn't have the kind of depth that all these other characters have. Like this movie makes direct reference and name drops Vesper from Casino Royale, who had this amazing impact on this James Bond and really turned him into the man he became, which played out for the last, decade and a half of our lives. So I really think that there was a missed opportunity with Malek's character. I didn't hate the guy, but he just wasn't he just wasn't up to par with some of the other great Bond villains that we've had over time. You know, he's not Trevelyan from GoldenEye. You know, he's not he's not the original. He's not the original Donna Pleasance Blofeld. He's none of that. Um, Blofeld is also in this movie, and Christoph Waltz does fine work with the few scenes that he's in. He's not a huge part of the story, but he is an important part of it. Ralph Fiennes continues to be fantastic as M after he took over for Judi Dench's character, starting with Spectre. So um, I think that the director really deserves a lot of credit for taking what could have been a bit of a train wreck that's too long and doing the absolute best that he could with it. There's a fantastic motorcycle sequence where Bond, wrecks and kind of destroys a uh, Triumph custom class. It's a Triumph factory custom Scrambler Scrambler 1200, which is like an amazing adventure bike. Completely destroys it. I'm obsessed with that bike because I own Triumph, so I was kind of like really sad in the theater. But this is also a movie that's designed to be seen in a theater. It's got that like pumping Hans Zimmer soundtrack that does sound a little bit too familiar to his other work, but mostly works well. And I think that as far as Bond movies go, this is probably my second favorite one after Casino Royale. And that doesn't say that I don't really like Skyfall. I think a lot of people will make the claim and make the argument, and can successfully make the argument that that's the greatest of the Daniel Craig Bond films. I think that Quantum of Solace is the worst by far. But this movie certainly holds its own, and I was really impressed with some of the decisions they made at the end of the film. This movie doesn't take the easy way out. It doesn't take the Hollywood way out, particularly the very end of the film. There were some directions, some decisions I thought they were going to make that I was pleasantly surprised they didn't. And I think when you watch the film, you'll understand what I'm talking about when I say that. I really want to keep this review as spoiler-free as possible, because I do think, all things considered, that No Time to Die is an extremely special film that gets so much of like what makes OG original Bond with the gadgets and the villains right. And so in one sense, it does have it one foot set a bit in the past, but then it takes the modern sensibilities of Bond, very human, very, emotionally driven at times character, and molds those two things together in a way that's really remarkable. The movie has gotten some grief for being a bit too woke. As somebody who really has a radar for that kind of nonsense, the movie is a little bit woke in a couple parts, but it doesn't overwhelm the film. And to me, it was never really a detriment. I'm sure there's people, if you want to find a video where somebody's going to bitch and moan about it on YouTube, about how this movie is too woke, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, it's free country, do whatever the hell you want, go for it. But I don't think it really impacts the movie as much as a lot of people would lead you to believe. So, yeah, if you like the Bond movies, if you especially like Daniel Craig as James Bond, I would definitely consider checking this one out. I'm not a huge fan of the Billie Eilish song in the beginning, but I also still think the James Bond, like the whole James Bond theme song thing, is kind of dumb. I'm sure there's people who love it, but this is really a very, very, very fitting and lovingly crafted tribute that really sums up all of the best parts of modern James Bond, while also paying homage to all of the great things and all of the great content and lines and characters and all these things that came before from the previous films, all portrayed by other actors. So very exciting to see what kind of direction the Bond films go in next. So if you like good movies, if you like action movies, this is going to be one of the best of the year, and I would definitely check it out. So thanks so much for checking out the review. If you enjoyed it and found it helpful, please consider subscribing. You can also like and share the video. That tells YouTube that, hey, it's worth promoting. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of No Time to Die? Would love to hear what you think about it. Where would you rank this among all of the total James Bond films or among the Daniel Craig films? So let me know, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m.